Yeah,
Yeah.
blood. I'm Linda from Wathena, Kansas. I have a slight idea. I've probably got 100 in my quilt room. I've not really counted them, but I keep putting up shelves to put them in. And that doesn't count the ones I've given away. I've given away numerous ones. That's why my son-in-law said I need to be stopped, but I don't know what else I'd do. You can only read so many books. So you've got to, I can't just sit. I don't like to just sit. I don't like to watch TV that much. I've got to do something. My hands have to be busy, so. That's hard to remember. I made some, when my friends had babies, I made some quilts. I can't even remember what I gave them. I made a lot of Care Bear ones, I know. I would applique the Care Bear onto just a big piece, so it wasn't a lot of pieced quilting or anything like that. I can't remember the first quilt I ever made. So, but I didn't do a lot of it till after I retired. I then started really quilting. I have trouble being real precise. It's still my problem altogether. Getting things square and making sure I cut them all right and get it put together evenly. I have a real problem with my 1/4-inch seams.
Why did the quilts matter to you?
Well, I started quilting, oh, for myself when I was probably in high school, and then evolved into making my children's clothes. I even made a leisure suit for my husband when leisure suits were the thing back in the day. And it just kind of evolved to that. I made my own clothes when I worked, but when I quit working, I had no need to keep sewing clothes together for me, so I had to channel it somewhere else, and I channeled it to quilts then. I gift them as best I can because I make a lot of them and I have a very big room full of quilts. And in fact, my son-in-law told me that I had to be stopped because I had too many. But I give them away as often as I can for gifts. Well, my first memory of quilts is my grandmother quilted. And she would, I remember sitting on the porch and cutting out, probably 2.5, 3-inch blocks. Back then you didn't have templates or anything, so she had a piece of sandpaper that she put on the fabric and cut around and quilted. And then she would go visit friends and they would actually hand quilt them then. So that's kind of when I first remember quilts. I didn't really make any then or anything, but those were my first introductions to it. And then my mother wasn't really a quilter as far as piecing the quilts and making the tops. She was, and I don't know how it evolved that she was a hand quilter. She did the quilting and more or less looked like a sewing machine. It looked like you did it on a sewing machine. Her stitches were so perfect. So I don't do that because there's no way I can be that good. But it just kind of, evolved in the family that way. It was more like a scrappy quilt that she made. I've got one quilt that she did. And of course she did it by hand. She didn't use the sewing machine to put them together or anything. So it kept her busy. She didn't get around well. She had bad knees and stuff, so she just kind of sat around and did that kind of work.
Were there other techniques that they had to use that you remember that have been improved since then? Are there other than a machine?
Well, the templates have made a big difference. Like I say, she had to just use cardboard they use cereal boxes. They cut those cardboards up to make the templates and that kind of thing. And of course, when my mother hand quilted, she just kind of used a pencil to draw the lines and keep them straight. She didn't have pencils that disappeared or anything like that. The fact that I've bought way too much fabric that I will never outlive, that I need to try to get rid of. Knowing that when I finish this one, I better pick a box and get rid of some more fabric and make another one.
What is the appeal then?
I like just the fact of putting them together to see how they go, and getting the finished project and seeing the whole thing done, and figuring out, what fabrics I'm going to use in the next one and how they're going to go together.
Do you have a favorite quilt?
No, I don't think that I do. Probably the one I'm working on. There have been a few that I've made that I don't like at all once I get done, but very few. Most of them I like when they're done.
So a finished quilt is
Yeah.
your favorite quilt.
Yeah, it's finished. I'm good. Well, I will say my daughter finally, after college and going out into the workforce, finally took up quilting. I'd like for my granddaughter to do it, but I doubt that she will. She tried when she was little to express an interest in it, and I made the mistake of letting her use my rotary cutter to cut out her stuff, and she cut her finger and it bled, and that's probably the last time she ever had anything to do with sewing. So I don't know that she'd ever take it up again. So, I mean, it wasn't a bad cut, but it was enough, for her.
For a kid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Blood. So I don't have to do housework? Is that good enough?
Yes.
Actually, I quilt because I've always been involved in sewing. Sewed clothes for myself, for my kids, and it just kind of evolved after I quit work. I didn't need to sew clothes anymore because I live in jeans, basically. And so I moved on to quilting. My mother quilted, my grandmother quilted, so I knew all along that I'd do something with it. I've always done handwork and that kind of thing, so it just evolved into quilting and buying fabric, which is a whole different, two hobbies in one.